I thank the gentleman. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Deutch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. There's been a lot of talk about dates and timelines. I'd like to actually just walk through, for the benefit of my colleagues, just a short timeline from this year. In January, the FBI, CIA, and NSA concluded the following, and I quote, "We assess Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at the U.S. presidential election. Russia's goals were to undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process, denigrate Secretary Clinton, and harm her electability and potential presidency. We further assess Putin and the Russian government developed a clear preference for President-elect Trump." Close quote. Mr. Rosenstein, do you have any reason to dispute that?
No.
In January, on January 24th, Michael Flynn denied to the FBI agents that he discussed U.S. sanctions with Russia before he took office. On January 26th, Acting Attorney General Sally Yates told the White House counsel that Flynn lied about the nature of his calls with Kislyak and is vulnerable to blackmail. On February 13th of this year, Flynn resigned over his conversations with the vice president. On February 15th, public reports of telephone records that show that members of the Trump campaign and other Trump associates had repeated contacts with senior Russian intelligence officials in the year before the election. On March 16th, documents released by Representative Cummings show that Flynn received $33,750 from Russia's state-owned TV for a speech that he made in Moscow. On March 20th, the FBI director acknowledged an investigation into possible collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. On May 9th, the president fired the FBI director. On May 10th, Trump met with Russian diplomats in the White House and revealed classified information and told them that he fired the head of the FBI, called him a nut job, and said, and I quote, "I face great pressure because of Russia. That's taken off," close quote. On May 11th, the president told NBC News that the Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. On June 7th, we learned President Trump urged Comey to drop the Flynn investigation. On July 8th, we learned of an undisclosed Trump Tower meeting between Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, Paul Manafort, and a Russian lawyer. The next day, 5 sources stated that Donald Trump Jr. agreed to the meeting on the premise that damaging information on Hillary Clinton would be provided. And 5 days after that, a veteran of the Russian military, we learned, also attempted that Trump Tower meeting with Donald Trump Jr., Paul Manafort, and Jared Kushner. On October the 5th, George Papadopoulos, one of 5 people the president identified as a policy advisor, pleaded guilty to one count of making a false statement to the FBI on January 27th about the timing, extent, and nature of relationships and interactions with certain foreign nationals. In the statement of offense, we learned that he reached out regarding his connections, that he could help arrange a meeting between Trump and Putin. On October 27th, former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort and campaign advisor Rick Gates were indicted on multiple counts, including conspiracy against the United States. In November, the President of the United States met with Vladimir Putin and said, and I quote, "He said he didn't meddle. He said he didn't meddle. I asked him again. You can only ask so many times. Every time he sees me, he says, I didn't do that, and I really believe that. When he tells me that, he means it." The President went on to say, I mean, give me a break, talking about the national security folks who put together that report that I quoted earlier. Give me a break. They are political hacks. On December 1st, former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn pleaded guilty to one count of making a false statement to the FBI about conversations he had with the Russian ambassador regarding sanctions. This is a little walk through what happened over the past year. I would like to ask you, Mr. Rosenstein, I'd like to quote some of my colleagues from this committee. One of them said that the special counsel's investigation into whether the Trump campaign assisted in its effort to interfere in the election is actually an attempt to overthrow the government of the United States. Do you believe that, Mr. Rosenstein?
No.
He said we're at risk of a coup d'etat in this country if we allow an unaccountable person. Is the special counsel unaccountable here?
No, he's not unaccountable.
He went on to say with no oversight. Is there no oversight at all of the special counsel?
There is oversight.
And then he went on to say that if we allow an unaccountable person with no oversight to undermine the duly elected President of the United States, is pursuing the rule of law undermining the duly elected President of the United States, Mr. Rosenstein?
No, it is not.
One of my other colleagues said we've got to clean this town up. He talked about firing Mueller. One of our former colleagues on this committee accused Mueller of having a vendetta against President Trump because he fired James Comey. Mr. Rosenstein, do you believe that he has a vendetta against the president?
No, I do not.
I would just conclude that this little walk through this 1 year in American history makes it impossible to understand how it is that my colleagues on the other side continue to launch attacks not only against reporters, against the FBI, against the special counsel, but they do so to throw dirt on this story, to make it try to go away. They may want to bury their heads in the sand, but Mr. Chairman, I want to make clear that they will not bury the rule of law in the United States of America, and I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair